Welcome to the Law, Your Money, and You. I'm Roberta Sapphire, an attorney in Sharon, Massachusetts.
And I'm Camille Barron, a financial coordinator, also in Sharon, Massachusetts. And Roberta, we're going to talk about our favorite subject today, financial literacy.
Yes.
Because probably our viewers know how much we've been doing with students and the different programs and the partnering. But we have someone here who's very interesting, very, very involved in financial literacy throughout the state.
And we are so excited, and we really are, to have you. And Scott Guild.
Guild, like wild.
Guild. You know, there's a Guild building in Norwood.
Oh, yes, there is.
Is
No
that
relation.
Oh, no relation.
Right.
You know that.
Although I was related to my great-grandfather was a assistant attorney general, and so he actually got to play attorney general when the attorney general was out of the country.
Oh, okay.
But that's the Guild I'm related to. Not related to Curtis Guild at all.
Okay.
Who was a governor.
All right. Thank you
Oh.
for sharing that.
Right.
Yeah, well, you don't need to be related to anybody because you, on your own, are very notable. And we thank you for coming here. And we always start out with, tell us a little bit about yourself, unless you want me to tell our viewers everything
Oh, that'll
about
take the
you.
whole show.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, Roberta and Camille, thank you very much for inviting me here and giving me an opportunity to talk about the Massachusetts Council on Economic Education and the work that it does in collaboration with other organizations to provide enhanced personal finance and economic education across the Commonwealth. So, my name is really George Prescott Guild Jr., so if I ever write a check, that's what I write. But my dad was senior. I didn't want to be junior, so I took a shortened version of my name, and so I'm Scott.
Good. Very
Right,
good.
so it's
That
Scott.
works.
You got it right.
Great,
Scott
Scott.
Guild. Presently the president of the Mass Council for Economic Education, but let me go back to the beginning. I taught for 23 years and was an administrator in the Newton Public School System. After that, I worked in a local and state strategy practice at Anderson Consulting. And after that, I was 13 years at the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston as a director of economic education.
Wow.
And for the last 2 years, I've been president of the Mass Council for Economic Education. So as you can see, education has been a thread that's woven through very different institutions, but had great opportunities to learn, to grow, and now I think it's my responsibility to give back.
So tell us, what is the mission of the
Well, we've
is it
got
the
this
Commission
nice
on-
little perky sort of slogan that we can say that our mission is to teach teachers to instill in young people an understanding of the fourth R, and that is a real-life understanding of everyday economics. So that's our mission.
Yeah, I was reading it. Reading, writing, arithmetic, and the fourth one is reality. And that's like the financial literacy fairs. We do
Right.
reality check.
Right.
Yeah,
That's it.
was-
And what's really good, I think, about what we've been doing lately in the Mass Council is we've been looking for ways to integrate personal finance and economic education within the curriculum. As you may know, there have been legislative attempts to require a sort of a standalone course, but there are some issues with unfunded mandates. And I think we all agree that if there were to be a mandate, it should be funded. And I'll talk a little bit maybe at the end about the Treasurer's report, because I was on the financial advisory to Deb Goldberg's state group. But presently, the Mass Council is a state affiliate. There's about 38 of them, state affiliates to the Council for Economic Education, which started in the 1950s. And it started because business people, educators, professors were concerned about the quality of economic education within the classroom, and they had some concerns about some of the resources. So the role of CEE, and we as the Mass Council for Economic Education, is to provide classroom teachers with quality resources and also professional development to make sure that they make good use of those resources. So Mass Council provides teacher training in personal finance and in economics. It provides advocacy. As I said, I was on the Treasurer's statewide advisory, but also was on what was wonderful is the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education created a gateway pilot program for financial literacy education. which was actually superb. It got funded 2 years. It actually got funded 3 years, but there was a change in administration, and it wasn't, I guess, a high priority for the new governor, so we didn't get the third year of funding. However, we learned a lot of really good things from that. So who are the gateway cities? It's Revere, Lynn, Salem, the two Quincy's. They actually worked together, North Quincy and Quincy, and ended up doing a program. Worcester, I'm sure I'm missing some, Springfield.
This is the other end of the spectrum. Quincy's out here.
Right. So it was all gateway
Yeah,
cities,
right.
cities in which immigrant populations would come in, and usually they were the sort of small industrial cities, not like Brockton, where I think Cedric has worked at, and he's a gentleman that I'll speak about because I think he has a promising practice. So the gateway cities, what was interesting about that is, number one, they required the schools to work with community partners. And in the past, sometimes schools are squeamish about outside folks. What we discovered from this experience is that it was a wonderful opportunity to bring new thinking, to broaden the curriculum, and also to bring additional resources. Because you say a Credit for Life fair. Think of how many people you would need to have to support that in terms of the number of stations or locations that you have. So one was the community partners was a really good piece to that project. Second was it had to culminate in some kind of demonstration. And again, some of the schools chose to do Credit for Life fairs. One school chose to do a family financial literacy program afterwards.
So the schools have to do this now?
It had to be part of this particular grant that went out to these 11 schools in 10 communities. It's over now. It lasted, as I said, 2 years, and the third year wasn't funded, which is too bad. But these are the wonderful things that we learned from it. And the third part of that Gateway pilot program was that there was an independent group, the Donahue Institute, that did assessment of the overall program, and we learned a lot of things from that. That there was a lot of personal finance education out there that could engage young people at the upper level, like the 11th grader and 12th graders, because they're taking on jobs. They're real life, they're thinking about college. But for the freshmen and sophomores, there wasn't enough material out there for them and related to their daily functioning. Now, one might think that, getting a new phone might be an important personal finance decision you make about, do I buy the phone? Do I, take the deal? What do I do? So I think we started thinking about sort of what are good examples to engage young people who are making certain kind of personal finance decisions, who weren't yet going to college or who haven't yet taken on a job, but who were making decisions that could impact them. Because you know that one's credit history stays with you for a long time.
Is that like that EverFi or something like that?
That's a little bit
program?
different. Yeah, EverFi as a program is I think it's an interesting program because it comes out of sort of behavior management, and then they moved into financial literacy. It's an off-the-shelf program that I think has quality pieces to it that a bank or a school or someone can put their name on it and call it theirs. So it's an off-the-shelf financial education program that in the state of Rhode Island, the treasurer has sort of given the imprimatur that that's exactly the way financial literacy is going to happen there, as opposed to how it's done here with the Mass Jumpstart Coalition, the Mass Council, NIFTY, etc.
We got to hear more now.
Okay.
I was wondering on that program that they did fund, was it an ongoing? In other words, they had the first year and then they built on the second year, or was it the
Oh yeah, it
first
was
year all over
fantastic.
again?
It started, again, each one of the communities came together with MADESE, created their programs, and there were very different programs. Some of the programs were, one school tried to do it included in all their classes, social studies, English, Spanish. Another school did it with a very small group of kids, but it was young ladies who sort of were pregnant and were in fear of dropping out of school, and then others did it in specific courses. In other words, they tried to do a standalone course. So there were actually, what we got out of that is 10 totally different programs, each of which had great value, They're all on the treasurer's website because the treasurer was very much supportive of this. And I have to say that one of the things about Massachusetts is, and we've discovered, is that it's like a house with good bones. You know it's got good stuff going, but we don't get good grades in financial literacy. The Champlain College Center on Financial Literacy gave Massachusetts an F, and I would say that the reason mostly is because it's not a required course. The Council for Economic Education does every 2 years, biannually, does a study of financial literacy and economics in the schools, and Massachusetts does not do well there either. It only has one of sort of the 5 indicators that it provides here. In other words, there are personal finance content in the curriculum frameworks.
Well,
But-
isn't that because, excuse me, isn't that because most of the schools don't have any courses? They're just starting
Okay.
now? Isn't
What
that what you're
what I would
doing?
say
You're
is that the
just
schools
starting?
have a local educational authority that decides the curriculum within their school committees, which makes sense. Some schools even require personal finance, and some schools require economics because their school committee, their parents, put pressure on the school to do so. Other schools may want to do so but don't have the resources, and I think there are some other schools, the issue is there's no time in the school day to add anything new. And I agree, there's a lot of pressure there. My argument would be, if we are the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and we think every public school student should have certain knowledge, I would certainly think that financial literacy is one of the risky behaviors that we ought to address for young people, just like we do for drug
Absolutely.
and driving and sex. I mean, everybody's got to have some kind of knowledge of that, and I would argue that financial literacy is right in that ballpark and is a very important thing. Of course, I'm very passionate about this, but I think even beyond my passion, that if you sit back and you look at it, you say, if we were to provide education to our students to be good citizens, what would we want them to have, and would financial literacy be a part of that?
Yeah,
And I
you've
think if you
got-
asked that
yeah.
question, you would have to say yes.
See, he has it, what we've been trying to say, to be good citizens. We've been saying we don't want them coming out of college with loans and this and that. But how can, his thing is it wraps it all up. To be good citizens, they have to be able to really make a living and not be saddled in debt. And how do they do that? The financial literacy that you're talking
And you've got to
about.
start. And you've got to start early. I mean, you'll be talking to Cedric
Right.
later. So this is a program that I think has a great value. Why do I think that Empower Yourself, which is a program that is an after-school program in Brockton, is an exemplary school program? I think it's exemplary. Number one is because he stayed with them from 6th grade through 12th grade. I think one of the things, if you're going to change people's mindset, you don't do it in one class, and you don't do it in 1 year. It takes a long time. What I'm impressed with is that Cedric does it pretty quickly. I can see those kids change. I've known him since I was the director of economic education. So let me give you an example for why I think he has a great program going on.
Cedric is Cedric Turner.
Cedric Turner, I'm sorry, who will be interviewing soon
At
with
another
you.
interview, yeah.
His program is one that works with after-school, middle school, and high school students. He stays with those kids from the Pluff and the Ashfield all the way through high school. There is a consumer mindset that is hard to break in this country because of all the commercials and things you see on TV. But if you work on the kids enough, they'll realize what the cost-benefit analysis, or they'll realize what, if they don't spend money on those $135, $200, $250 Jordans, what is the opportunity cost? What are the other things that they can do with that? And he gets into that mindset, and not only has gotten into the individual's mindsets, he's impacting the families, and he's impacting the school culture. Because in the Brockton Public Schools, they don't take many field trips, but Cedric's Empower Yourself kids get to go to the Fed, get to go to the financial institutions,
Yeah,
get to
wonderful.
participate in these competitions like the Global Education Summit that he'll talk about probably later, or you'll talk about. So,
Which a lot of wealthier communities don't do.
right.
And should
But
do.
I believe whether you're rich or you're poor, this is very important for you.
Absolutely.
Because, you know, I've had friends when in my day, not too smart, credit card helped pay for tuition. Now, think about that. You know, even in my day, tuition wasn't that expensive, but if you put it on a credit card and you don't pay it off, you understand the implications of that. Having kids understand things like, Anna Marie Lasardi is an economist who has also taken on personal finance, says that young people need to know three things. And I'll continue to say that this is important. They need to know about compound interest, how it works for you in investing, how it works against you in terms of credit cards. You have to understand the significance of inflation and its impact on money. And you also have to understand risk and risk management, so the idea of insurance. You get those three concepts across to kids. Now you're starting to talk about kids who make informed decisions because there's a symmetry in the information that you're getting. Because I think one of the problems in society today is the people selling you stuff got more information than you got, and we've got to equal that out so you can make a rational decision about, you know, do I want to buy a house with a balloon payment after 5 years?
Yeah.
Maybe not, if you understand how that works. Should I invest $50 a month of the money that I make in a 401k? I have a son. I showed him what could happen if you did that. He doesn't save $50, he saves $25, but he doesn't make a whole lot of money. He's about 31 right now, but he continues to, the minute he got his job, he got a 401k, he's got matching, he's cooked, he's working on the right direction. I have a couple other sons, not quite the same, but those are little different stories. I could talk about them. So the role that I have in the Mass Council gives me an opportunity in terms of the advocacy to advocate for, you know, financial literacy. There was a treasurer's report that just came out. We spent about, I don't know, it was about 6,000 hours in terms of all the people who are involved. We spent about 6 months, came out with the treasurer's report. It does not require a course. It doesn't say that. But what it does say, and this is what we in the council are working at, we've discovered that these wonderful islands of competency out in Western Mass, JA Western Mass does some great work out there with some of the Credit for Life fairs, and Jennifer Conley, who's out there in the Springfield area. We've got Kerry Bedard, who's at JA of Northern New England. We've got Jennifer Green, who's at Networks for Teaching Entrepreneurship. We have Matt Paradise, who was involved in the summit that was at the Fed March 18th on building financial
Where are they
foundations.
hiring?
These people are all, that's the problem, they're there. And so our job, we think in the Mass Council, is to connect, one, identify who these people are, and then to connect the networks. We particularly want to look at the community college, the university state system, and the UMass system to get them more engaged in personal finance education. These are the students that are going to come to their schools. These are the students that are going to have the debt issues. These are the students, particularly in community college, you know, if you don't have an emergency fund, you're probably toast. You know, and so we're finding that getting those institutions, of which we have about 38 of them if you count all of them up, get them engaged in the process. Now, let me give you an example. I happened to do some work with Lynn in this Gateway project because at the Fed we were supporting the Lynn Gateway projects particularly. Gene Constantino is the principal there. He now has connections with, and this is what we want, with Centerboard, which is a social service community organization there, who is then, that's Mark LaJoy. And then there's also Metro Credit Union, which is the sort of a funding source that could be there. That's Charlene Bauer. And so we're trying to get like Lynn and Revere schools connected to funding sources and people with resources with schools in the area in case, say, they want to do a Credit for Life or say they want a professor to come in and speak with them so that they know that, you know, Professor Moon at North Shore Community College is the person to contact if I want to do something there. Or Dr. Dorothy Sedin is the person I want to contact at Salem State University. So you have this list of co-located resources. People who need the resources, people who have the resources, and people who can do some funding. Because the credit unions and the banks, they're out there, but you've got to get yourself organized about what am I asking for, why am I asking it, and what are the results going to be. And that's the other thing I'll say that came out of this Gateway project. Jennifer Connelly out in JA Western Massachusetts, she works with Dean and Putnam, 2 technical schools. She's also working with Elms College. So not only do they provide a Credit for Life Fair, but now they're doing evaluations of the program to better understand how to do it better and to talk about effectiveness, and also to use that to go back to the division of banks that gave money to the treasurer's office that made this
Boy.
money available for Credit for Life Fairs to say, this is,
Amazing.
we can show you that this is a learning experience that has value, and this is what kids learn, and this is what we've learned in terms of how to improve it. So I think there's clearly some islands of competency where people are doing really good work. The question is, how do we recognize that, identify that, have opportunities like this to talk about it, share it with one another. Let me give you another example. Leominster Credit Union does Credit for Life Fairs. And Ingrid Adati, who's part of our Mass Saves group, that's this larger group of people interested in financial education, said, you know, I need people to be volunteers. My group got immediately back to him, said, you know, you can go here, you can go there. Bill Casey, who is a certified public accountant, said, oh, and the CPAs will provide you some services. So she
Yeah.
got about 5 different resources, and now on April 6th, she's doing Credit for Life Fair with resources that happened because of a monthly call that we have with one another.
We did one here, and just from our resources, we brought in, I would say, most of the volunteers, and now we're headed for another school. But that's fascinating. You got all these people together. I mean, I know it is. We've been doing it for 5 years, but on a smaller level of trying to get financial literacy in, and there's so many, but they don't realize, one, you know, these debts, they're not dischargeable in bankruptcy, and the kids, they don't know when they go through at the end that, here's your bill, oh, you're paying interest on interest, and that number one, you said the compound interest.
Yeah, and
It's
one young
wonderful
man, I
work you're
remember,
doing.
someone just told me, I can't remember where the Credit for Life Fair was, but it was one of the students reported back that he was really surprised that he got, you know, they give you a persona, and they give you
Right.
a position,
Yeah.
and then they give you a certain amount of money. And so the
Yeah.
kid was making $125,000, and so he figured $125,000, I'll buy this really rich car, and I'll have this, whatever. And then he's tried to start paying some of his bills off and realized it didn't work. Now, the advantage of that for that young man is, one, it's a real reality check. What does $125,000 really mean in terms of the lifestyle that I think that I'm going to have, the standard of living? And it also allows them to screw their life up, but it wasn't for real. And now it lets them reflect on some of the choices they make and say,
Right.
you know, maybe I'll go with, you know, maybe an apartment.
Yeah.
Maybe I won't
Yeah.
go with the Lamborghini. I'll go with
I think
some
it's
other
still
form
in the
of car.
back of their head, it's not real.
But
Right.
you know what? I remember from the last one that we did, we called it the Financial Reality Fair. But I remember we sat at the table where, what was it called, reality check? Where
Reality
we had to
check.
do this, you know,
Yeah.
the checks and
I know, yeah,
balances.
reality
And I
checks.
remember there were several students who had enough, you know, they had surpluses. And, you know, I said, now it's up to you what you do with that surplus, whether you choose to spend it now or invest it in retirement for the future. That's driven by your values. So this whole exercise helps you to understand what's most important to you, and then you allocate your resources that way.
Well, that's interesting you bring that up, because the summit that just happened at Building Financial Foundations that happened at the Fed on March 18th was talking about family financial dynamics. That, you know, in the schools we work with the schools, in the community we work with the parents, but it's really the dynamic and the interaction. What are my what are my family's expectations? You're gonna go to college. Okay. If that's true, what are my options? You know, 4 years at Harvard, or, you know, 4 years at a state school, or what? 2 years at a community college, which would, you know, cut in half my costs, and then go 2 years to finish up in a 2+2 program.
lot of them are doing
and it's
that.
and it's getting kids to start thinking about that. When I was at Newton North High School, I had an AP student, advanced placement student, who was in my history class, and he was in the library, and so we were talking. And it was when computers first came out, and there was that square box that was called a something and something. I can't even remember the name of it. So
Cathode
we're talking
matrix.
a little bit about computers. This is way back when, folks. And so I said, well, where are you going to go to school? I said, I'm going to go to University of Massachusetts. I said, you got a 5 on your AP. You can go anywhere you want to go. And he said, yeah, I thought about that, but I'm going to spend my money in graduate school, not in undergraduate
isn't that
school. So I'll go to
interesting?
UMass, do well, and then that'll give me options, more options to go
smart,
in graduate school.
smart.
And this was back in several decades ago.
Oh, yeah,
But
yeah.
that young man was right on target. I mean, he sort of had in his mind what he wanted to do. He had a plan, and he was going to follow it.
Now you said you had a story for us because we're in You've Got to Be Kidding now. I mean, we could go on for hours.
Okay,
and we
so
have to come
when you
back.
think of financial
Yeah.
literacy,
Let's get our bag
right?
out.
So
Oh, yeah,
when you think
bag
of
out.
financial
Now
literacy,
You've Got to Be Kidding bag.
you don't usually think about it and sailing. A couple years ago, one of our members of the Mass Saves Collaborative liked sailing down in Charles River, and he loved to sail. And he got a bunch of kids from suburban and urban schools to come down to Charles River, learn and race on the boats, and then come in and have a competition in the Charles River in financial literacy. Great event. Never thought of putting the two of them together. I have another colleague who's thinking of something new. He's calling it Financial Fairways, where you use the analogy of course management to also talk about money management. It's really brilliant. So some of the people I work with are some very innovative folks who are
Boy.
trying to connect, certain forms of interactive activity with financial education and engage young people to make more informed financial decisions.
Boy, and he's not kidding.
No, you're not kidding. So we're not going to say
My
You've Got to Be
God,
Kidding.
this is
You're not kidding.
like a whirlwind. This one I think I'm going to watch 50 times and take all kinds of
There's
notes.
much more.
This
I
is-
know there's much
the,
more.
The funny thing is, you were we went where you were the I call it
MC.
the MC. I know I was going to say maitre d' again. Food on my mind, but
Food
I
for
mean
thought.
that was unbelievable to see the young people, middle school students, talking about women's rights or global economy and talk about this is a world now of diversity. So there was the black kid, the Chinese kid, the Indian, although he was from Pakistan, and then there's the white kid with the curly hair, and they were all talking as if they were graduates of Harvard. These young kids from inner city, so brilliant.
What's happened is that Cedric in his empowerment program has gotten the attention of these young people, and they do the research. He gives them some support. He has an economics background,
We're
which
going
is
to be
helpful.
talking to him.
Right, and he does the research. But what I like best about it is they not only describe the issue, they describe the solution for the issue. And in each one of those cases, some of the kids had very innovative but supported, substantive
Yeah.
solutions to the problems.
Well, with that, it's just a wrap, and we remind people about financial literacy. And Scott, thank you so much. You're going to be back.
You
And-
have
I'll
to.
be glad to.
And Camille winds it up.
Yes, thank you.
Right.
It was very. I'm
It's-
sure. I know
I
there's
think
much
we
more.
might almost have
You
gone
did- you
over.
probably
Scott
just
Guiled.
touched the tip
Did
of the
I say it right
iceberg.
then, Guiled?
Guile, very good.
Guiled.
Yes, thank
Right.
you. We totally support what you're doing, and I hope that we're doing a lot here
We
in
hope we
Sharon, and
can
we
partner
can hope
with
we
you.
can do some partnering with you because
Yeah.
it's just fantastic.
Absolutely.
So, to our viewers, we want to thank you for watching the show. I know a lot of you are very interested in this because you've let us know that. So, we're going to continue with following through on financial literacy topics. If you have any questions or any thoughts, any ideas, if you'd like to join our team, please let us hear from you. Send us an email. Because remember, this is your show. The law, your money,
And you!